In bittersten Sturm, die heilige Form. Ja, da, 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 ja, da, 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 ja, 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 da, da, ja, da, ja, da, ja, da, ja, da, שבחי ירושלים את אדוני, הללי אלוהי ציון. שבחי ירושלים את אדוני, הללי אלוהי ציון. כי זה מרחי שערייך, כי זה מרחי שערייך, ברך בנייך בקרבך, ברך בנייך בקרבך, ברך בנייך בקרבך. Halleli, Halleli, Elohai Zion. Halleli, Halleli, Elohai Zion. Shabachi Yerushalayim et Adonai. Halleli, Elohai Zion. Shabachi Yerushalayim et Adonai. Halleli, Elohai Zion. כי זה מרחי שערייך, כי זה מרחי שערייך, ברך בנייך בקרבך, ברך בנייך בקרבך, ברך בנייך בקרבך. Halleli, Halleli, Elohai Zion. Halleli, Halleli, Elohai Zion.
Bruchim habaim. Hello, welcome. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Lauren Graybell Herman, and I am the rabbi of SAJ-Judaism, that stands for all. Okay, recording in progress, that's good. Last night and today, in synagogues across the world, we heard this line from the Megillah, from Megillat Esther. Umi yodea im le'et kazot higat lemalchut. Who knows? Perhaps you have attained your position for a moment such as this. Today, we celebrate the story of another Jewish woman in history who was asked by an influential relative who happened to have the same name as the uncle of our heroine in Purim, and asked a similar question. by initiating bat mitzvah and asking, or politely telling, Judith that she would be the first. And Judith Kaplan Eisenstein, being in the right place at the right time, in the right family, and gifted with certain talents and abilities, put fear and uncertainty behind her and stood at this synagogue, a few doors down back in the day, and became the first bat mitzvah in the history of the United States. And in doing so, in the vein of our other Jewish heroine, she changed the course of history forever, as we will hear much more about this evening. So for that, let us get a big round of applause. As my preacher colleagues would say, can I get an amen? We get an amen. And tonight, 100 years later, we commemorate and celebrate. And in such a moment as this, in a time of war, with our hearts with Ukraine, and with strife and hatred abroad and at home, even at a time like this, and maybe especially at a time like this, it is vital that we take time to rejoice. Just as the holiday we celebrated teaches us, LaYehudim hayta ora v'simcha v'sason v'yikar kain tihi elanu. The Jews of old enjoyed light and joy and gladness, and so may it be for us. May the joy in celebrating Judith and the 100 years of progress that have been made fuel us for a better, more equitable world, Jewish community, and let us say, Amen. Tonight, we also kick off Rise Up Bat Mitzvah at 100 National Shabbat, an initiative created by SAJ and the Jewish Women's Archive, with 19 national and renowned Jewish organizational co-sponsors. And we're going to have our tech person bring up the list and scroll down to all these amazing co-sponsors. They span 5 Jewish denominations, as well as including secular feminist organizations. Thank you. Over this coming Shabbat, congregations across the country, from New York to Los Angeles, to Missouri, to Ontario, not just the country, to Virginia, to Chicago, to Boston, and everywhere in between, people will celebrate Bat Mitzvah in their own way, utilizing the resources, the incredible resources found on the Rise Up Bat Mitzvah at 100 website. And if you haven't checked it out, please do so after, and the link should be in the chat for those who are home. Today, I even received an email from a leader in a congregation in Brussels that has a full day of programming this Shabbat to celebrate Bat Mitzvah. For the national and even global Jewish community to come together like this, around something positive, around something inspiring, fills me with incredible hope for a bright future for our children and our children's children. And I hope it does for you as well. We have an incredible and packed program for this evening with scholars, rabbis who each have a different area of expertise to talk about, performances, and elected officials, including, drum roll please, the first female governor of New York, who will join us this evening. Before we jump in just a second, I want to offer a little bit of housekeeping and acknowledgments. First, we welcome everyone here on the Zoom who's coming from all over the country and world. Someone signed up from Mumbai. Welcome to all of you. We're so glad you're here. I'm not sure what the number is right now, but a little bit ago it was 259 people on the Zoom. I want to also acknowledge that we are holding this event and broadcasting this event in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, which is the traditional homeland of the Lenni Lenape people on the Lenape island of Manhattan. We are grateful for the opportunity to be on this land. Second, I want to acknowledge that among maybe people in the room, and I think for sure on the Zoom, are members of Judith Kaplan Eisenstein's family, and we want to thank you for being with us. And I want to also acknowledge that in this room and on the Zoom are trailblazing women, first women leaders in their congregations and their positions in their geographic areas. Some of them emailed me this week to let me know. And we truly stand on your shoulders this evening. So thank you for everything you have done to blaze a trail for people like myself and so many others. Lastly, I want to point you to your program books. There is a link in the chat for those who are at home and the program book here. This will have the full bios of every speaker. To save time, we're not going to read every bio, but we really encourage you to read it along and take it with you. And it also has a very, very long list of thank yous at the end. But in addition to those long lists of thank yous, there are a few people that it is necessary to give a bit of special attention. First, Judith, and I see her in the Zoom right now, Judith Rosenbaum, CEO of Jewish Women's Archive, who is joining us from Boston. I approached Judith and also Carol about this idea, this wacky idea about 6 or 9 months ago, and we have been partners day to day, week by week, ever since, and Judith has done so very much. Thank you, Judith, for everything you do for this and for everything you do in your work at Jewish Women's Archives. The second person is Mick Moore. I want to invite you to stand, Mick. Thank you, please. Where would we be without our allies, the genius behind at Judith Kaplan 1922 Instagram story series? This, for those, we're going to talk a little bit more about it later, but if you have not checked out these stories, you need to. They are fantastic. They tell history in a creative and beautiful way, and in a unique way, and they're on Instagram, but if you don't have Instagram, they're also on SAJ's YouTube channel. Thanks, Mick. We want to thank Sally Gottesman, who is at home this evening, who is our executive producer, and without whom none of the Instagram project would not be possible. I want to thank Eva Weiner, the Deputy Director of Jewish Affairs at the Executive Branch, where she's in the corner there, who was really a strong and fierce advocate of getting the governor to join us this evening. Thank you so much, Eva. And I want to thank two people who have been going above and beyond, Monica Klein, our press and PR person, and Eden Sidney Foster, our administrator for the 100th anniversary. Now, I turn our program next to Dr. Rabbi Carol Balin. Carol, come on up. Her full bio is in the program, but I just want to say that Carol is writing a book on bat mitzvah, and she really is the expert on bat mitzvah, and she has been so incredibly generous in sharing her research, her Torah, and her learning with me, with the entire team, but also with the Jewish community at large. So thank you so much, Dr. Balin.
Thank you. Good evening. I want to thank Rabbi Lauren for that really lovely introduction. I want to give a shout out to Susan Hoffinger, her congregant, who put us together about a year ago. I want to thank Judith Rosenbaum from JWA and the Can We Talk podcast. I want to thank Mick Moore and Monica for amplifying this very significant event in Jewish life. So, 2 years before my bat mitzvah, I dressed up as a bar mitzvah boy. It was Purim, 1975. I counted back, I think, if I'm right, it was 47 years ago. I wore a red blouse with an oversized collar tucked into chocolate brown Levi corduroys. I dug a wrinkled yarmulke stamped with a distant cousin's name and bar mitzvah date out of my father's dresser drawer and bobby pinned it to my head. I magic marked blue stripes on white cloth and cut fringe into its end for a prayer shawl. With a silver goblet fashioned out of Reynolds wrap, I was good to go. I cannot tell you why I felt compelled to cross-dress, so to speak, to represent a Jew coming of age in the mid-70s. I certainly knew girls who had become bat mitzvah, including my own older sister. I suspect that in my fifth grade eyes, boys were the real Jews, and girls dressed up to pretend they were. Boys got to have their ceremonies on Saturday mornings and participate in the Torah service with authentic talitot and kippot with their own names on them. Girls who received the very same education as those boys were relegated to Friday nights when the sacred scroll typically remained in its holy ark out of our reach. If only that fifth grader dressed as a boy had known that girls just like her had sparked a gender revolution that began in fits and starts but transformed Jewish life forever. Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, as you know, introduced the bat mitzvah ceremony for his daughter Judith on March 18, 1922, 2 years after women won the vote in this country, at this very congregation, known at the time aptly as the Society for the Advancement of Judaism, and today is known as SAJ, Judaism that stands for all. He often quipped that Judith was the first of 4 reasons for his doing so, the other 3 being her younger 3 sisters. On a sunny Shabbat morning, beneath a sky colored like the stripes of the future Israeli flag, Judith remembered walking to shul with, as she said, father, mother, disapproving grandmothers, and her 3 little sisters to the brownstone, where the society held all its functions. Back in the day, SAJ met down the block at 41 West 86th, the former home of the songwriter George M. Cohan of Yankee Doodle Dandy and Give My Regards to Broadway fame. The front room, formerly a formal dining room, was outfitted as a makeshift sanctuary with a bima and an ark and was reserved for men only. In the larger room at the rear, men and women sat together, but Judith was forced to sit in the front room. As she said years later, women's rights or no women's rights, the old habit of separating the sexes at worship died hard. The Shabbat morning service hummed along and at its usual pace, and then, as Judith recalled, Father was called up for the honor of reading the Maftir, the concluding section of the weekly Torah portion, and then the Haftarah. Once the Holy Scroll was rolled up and safely secured, Judith was permitted to make her debut. She recited the standard blessings of an Aliyah, but read a selection chosen by her father the night before from her own Chumash, a printed Bible. Of course, there was Kiddush after the services, though modest. Judith said her father disapproved of splashy affairs. Congregants munched on gefilte fish and kichels that her aunt had made by the hundreds. At the party back at the Kaplan home that evening, rugelach, tea, and Judith's favorite, hot dogs, were served. While bat mitzvah was radical in its day, Rabbi Kaplan never intended bat mitzvah to be bar mitzvah's equal. Whereas bar mitzvah was a gateway to full and regular participation in Jewish worship for boys, bat mitzvah was a dead end. After the ceremony, everything was expected to snap back into place as the girl resumed her secondary status in the Jewish community. But something unexpected happened along the way. As hundreds followed in Judith's footsteps, girls began to expect and even demand to do what boys did. Sparks began to fly at SAJ in 1945, when post-bat mitzvah girls petitioned to carry the Torah. They believed they were at least as strong as, they said, those old men who were allowed to march with the scrolls on Simchat Torah. After winning that battle, they set their sights on regular ritual honors. What was the point, they said, of all that religious training if the bat mitzvah ceremony was one and done? In all but the most traditional settings, girls not only gained parity with boys and men, but spurred grown women to do the same. Women sought positions on synagogue boards and pushed to be counted in a minyan. Remarkably, when Sally Prisan became the first female rabbi in America in 1972, and we have historic firsts as well with Rabbi Sandy Sasso in the Reconstructionist movement in 1974. When those two women became rabbis, they had girls half their age to thank for paving the way. As bat mitzvah became well established by the 70s, women and men who had missed it as adolescents, either because they opted out, or it wasn't an option, or they had converted to Judaism, felt inspired by their own daughters to come of age as adults. In less than 100 years, the blink of an eye in the long Jewish past, bat mitzvah girls pushed the heavy needle of history forward. Paradoxically, I argue, their innocuity was their superpower. Cloaked in seemingly girlish innocence, their participation became acceptable to Jews in the pews. Marilyn Moskowitz told me that her 1953 bat mitzvah was an experiment to see whether girls could be counted. After her bat mitzvah, she said, they began to count 2 women for each man in a minyan, and then eventually went 1-to-1. Margie Tarmy Berkowitz told me that her Zeta marveled that she could become bar mitzvahed, as he put it, and afterwards he never stopped asking her to chant for him. Grandfathers everywhere, along with their sisters and their cousins and their aunts, suspended their disbelief in the face of all that girl power. And the girls themselves internalized that power. After Betsy Ravitch Chase became the first bat mitzvah girl in the state of Vermont in 1952, she said she felt entitled to take her place in the Jewish community as a member and as a leader. While girls at the cringy age of 12 or 13 stepped into the spotlight and sparked a revolution in Jewish life over the course of the 20th century, gender-expansive kids are now bringing us into the next phase of the revolution as they upend old categories. But how do you shake gender out of a rite that marks either a Jewish girl becoming a woman or a Jewish boy becoming a man? The responses are as creative as they are diverse. Soren and Claire Barnett did it twice. They became bat mitzvah as a 13-year-old at a synagogue in 2011, and then bar mitzvah 5 years later after changing their pronouns to they and their and taking the name Soren on a birthright trip in Israel in 2016. Ruby Marks, who uses feminine pronouns but doesn't feel like a boy or girl, stood before her community as its first gender-neutral B mitzvah in 2019, and I understand here at SAJ you have already adopted that custom. Tomorrow night, at Shabbat services across the country, we will celebrate or continue the celebration as we start tonight of Bat Mitzvah Centennial. I will give thanks to gutsy Judith Kaplan, who stepped into the spotlight and drove a nail into the coffin of Jewish patriarchy. I will sing the praises of women who found courage in their daughter's example to become bat mitzvah in middle age or beyond, and also gain access, equal access, to that of men. And I will salute non-binary teens who are shaping the next iteration of the Jewish coming-of-age ceremony. And you know what? Next year for Purim, I think I'll dress up as Judith Kaplan.
I'm going to
she's on.
I believe that right now, Eva, is that true? Where'd she go? Yes? No, never mind. Yes, maybe. Can you give me a signal, Eden? 5 more minutes? Great, okay. Carol, that was perfect. Thank you so much, Professor Balin. Thank you so, so much for that amazing insight, and again, for your generosity of spirit and sharing all of your Torah with all of us. We are now so happy to introduce the 12-year-old girl that many of us have fallen in love with over the last few weeks. And if you didn't see at her bat mitzvah today, she learns that it's tomorrow. And then soon we're gonna hear that it happens. And so Dylan, we are in love with you and we're so glad you're here. Please come forward. She's gonna offer us a monologue for us. Let me just make sure this is on. Okay, all right, you sit here.
Thank you. It's done. It's over. I guess I'm now a Jewish woman. Wait, does that mean I'm the first Jewish woman? Okay, here's what happened. I made a little sketch. The service took place on the first floor of the SAJ house, with the men seated in the front and the women seated in the adjoining room in the back. I had to sit up front with the men, away from Mama and my sisters and my grandmas. Everything happened really quickly. Papa had been called up for the honor of reading the Maftir and Haftorah, and right after that, I remember being called up. I remember looking at everyone in the room, all their faces. They were really close because I was standing in front of the bima, away from the Torah school. I said the blessings, read from my own Humash, the book of Leviticus, in both Hebrew and English. Then the scroll was returned to the ark with song and procession. There was a sermon, but I have no idea what he said. It is all a blur. I can't believe it's over. Okay, I have to get back. We're supposed to have a party soon.
Dylan, thank you so much. You have brought Judith to life for all of us and for a new generation of Jewish girls and women. We cannot thank you enough for being a part of this project. And again, thank you to Mick and the entire team at who made this possible. Let's give one more round of applause. So now I think, that we are about to welcome, this is so funny. This is so unnerving. I'm not sure. They said yes. Yes? Yes? Okay. Gail, do you know? Okay. Okay. She's not standing there. Could I invite you? Cancer Lisa? Yeah. Yeah, because that takes a long time. Yeah. Okay. This is, oh wait, yes, I'm getting a thumbs up. Okay. So when we dreamed this up, we thought, oh, we really want Governor Kathy Hochul to come to this event. But we definitely did not think that that was necessarily possible. But here we are, thanks to the hard work of so many people, including our very own Ruth Messenger, Wendy Pastor, and Eva from the governor's office and the deputy director of, Eva, who is the deputy director of Jewish Affairs for the governor's office. We have the absolute privilege and pleasure of welcoming the first female governor of the state of New York, Kathy Hochul.
you, thank you. First of all, happy Purim. And Rabbi Lauren, I'm here because... This is for short people. I'm short.
Can people hear her?
No, you want me to step down?
Step down.
Okay.
Get rid of this.
Okay. I guess in some environments I'm considered tall. This is great. I've never had this experience, but what a wonderful celebration. And Rabbi Lauren, I'm so proud to be here. And this is a milestone in our state's history, our nation's history. And to be able to join you here at the invitation of a person who is also a woman who made history, Ruth Messenger. I saw her a couple weeks ago. She said, this is going to be a very special celebration. Of course, I knew my great friend Carolyn Maloney, who I was roommates with in Washington. When I first got elected, Carolyn Maloney would be here, because Carolyn Maloney is everywhere. And another great friend, our former borough president, now council member Gail Brewer, is here tonight. I knew she would be here. Our comptroller, Brad Lander, is here as well. I want to thank him. I see him every day of the week. But most importantly, you're here. You're here to celebrate, during Women's History Month, coincidentally, the 100th anniversary of a significant movement in the rights of women in the Judeo world. And I want to say that this was a significant event because for a long time, this was another one of those rights that were denied women, just like the right to vote was denied women, just like the right to own property was denied women, and the right to simply have the same rights as other young Jewish men, brothers. And finally, someone said, enough is enough. Back in 1922, a very enlightened rabbi. And sometimes it takes enlightened men to help women get down the journey as well. So let's acknowledge the men who stand with the women. And to recognize Mordecai Kaplan saw that he had this very smart daughter, Judith, 12 years old, and thought that this crazy idea, just like the crazy idea that women should have the right to vote and to make their own decisions, maybe my daughter has the right to have the privilege to read the Torah in public for the first time as part of a bat mitzvah. And they made history that day, unbeknownst to them. And people celebrate that now 100 years later. And Judith lived a long life, 86 years. And through her story, telling what she had done, it inspired other people to make history as well. So it is Women's History Month. I know some people in this room have made a little bit of history. Ruth Messenger, I think I have as well. But this is a significant time to honor the progress that we've made, but also realize in this time, we also face society's great challenges. And I think about the fact that anti-Semitism continues to rear its ugly head. And we have to always stand vigilant against this, whether it's attack at yeshivas or synagogues or people on the street. This is something that all of us have a moral responsibility to stand up and call out, as I have many times in the 7 months I've been your governor, but for 7 years as lieutenant governor. I've been to enough vigils and candle services and memorial services. We think about what happened to people who simply wanted to worship in person. I want you to know I will continue to honor the accomplishments of Jewish women and celebrate them, just as we talk about Judith Kaplan tonight. But I want you to also know for sure that I will defend the right of every New Yorker to worship where they choose, safe from harm, safe from harassment, and certainly safe from anti-Semitism. That is my commitment as I leave here tonight and celebrate this significant event that happened right here in this very space, right here. I can feel this, that this is a significant part of our history. And as the governor, as we talk about women's history, 1848, the very first gathering of women to insist on those rights, 1917, the first time women had the right to vote. I'm going to add to that 1922, the first bat mitzvah occurred in our state. So thank you for the opportunity to just say hello and to, as I look at the young women, the girls, and know that they have this very special privilege that has been conferred to them, and it's been a right of theirs for 100 years because of the courage of a young woman and her father, and it happened here in this very special place. So thank you very much for allowing me to say hello.
Thank you so much, Governor Hochul. What an honor, what a blessing. What an honor and what a blessing. Thank you. We will take that with us and to keep us with strength. So while we have our dignitaries here, we'd love to invite Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I want to thank your extraordinary Rabbi, Lauren Herman, for inviting me to be here tonight at SAJ. And I'm pleased to recognize my very good friend, the incomparable Ruth Messinger, who's been a longtime member of this congregation. Ruth was a groundbreaking politician, a great city council member, a great Manhattan borough president, and a heroine. I want to also thank all of my other colleagues in government. Gail Brewer, also a great borough president, Brad Lander, and really all of you for being here tonight. I am delighted to join you in celebrating an extraordinary milestone, the 100th anniversary of the first bat mitzvah held in a synagogue, when 12-year-old Judith Kaplan was given the opportunity to read right here a Torah portion in front of the congregation. In the history of firsts, this was an incredibly important one. It took place less than 2 years after women won the right to vote, at a time when women were still denied access to most jobs, when they couldn't get credit in their own names, and when equal pay was a distant fantasy. By supporting bat mitzvahs, SAJ recognized that women belonged at the podium in front of the entire community, where they can lead, inspire, and make a difference in the world. They opened a door, and it is remarkable to think of the thousands of girls who have proudly walked through since then, taking their place as members of the community. I think it's no accident that so many great women leaders in our country have been Jewish. Many of them started on the path to leadership with their bat mitzvah. I am honored to be here at this groundbreaking synagogue, and I am thrilled that the lines of my district, the 12th Congressional District of New York, have been redrawn following the 2020 census to include a strip of the Upper West Side from Columbus to Central Park West, from 59th to 84th Street. I represented portions of the West Side in the past, both in Congress and as a member of the City Council, and I look forward to representing it again in the future. I appreciate the opportunity to let you know some of the work I have been doing to support the Jewish community, including my work to author and pass the Never Again Holocaust Education Bill, which ensures that the lessons of the Holocaust are taught to American children, and the Nazi War Crimes Disclosure Bill, which opened secret government files to let us know why so many former Nazis were permitted to enter our country after World War II. Both bills were considered so important that they received presidential signing ceremonies at the White House, which is very rare and for landmark legislation. As fewer Holocaust survivors and members of the greatest generation are around to tell their stories, we must ensure that Americans understand the unique horror of an industrialized country using all of the sophisticated technology at its disposal to try to systematically eradicate the Jewish people. It is an issue that has greater resonance now as a growing number of Jews are reporting experiencing anti-Semitism. According to an American Jewish Committee report issued in October, young people on college campuses are the most likely to report it. Here in New York, there have been numerous attacks on visibly Jewish individuals and Jewish institutions, and political offices, like mine, have been defaced with swastikas and other anti-Jewish graffiti. I hope President Biden's nominee for Special Envoy to combat and monitor anti-Semitism, Deborah Lipstadt, will be approved. I am proud to have supported the congressional effort to double the funding for the nonprofit security grant program, which provides money to institutions like synagogues that are likely to be targeted by terrorists or hate crimes. We saw how important it is to have programs to train religious leaders and staff to deal with an attack after the hostage situation in Texas, where the Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker used his training to enable all of the hostages to flee safely. In the aftermath of this attack, Jewish organizations have applied for funds in record numbers, requesting twice the amount of money available for the program. We need to double the amount of funds available for the grant program yet again. Finally, I have been impressed to see Israel emerge as a possible peace broker amid Russia's illegal, brutal assault on Ukraine, thanks to its deep ties with the people of both countries. I am especially thankful that Israel has been providing substantial humanitarian aid to Ukraine during the crisis, establishing 6 offices on Ukraine's borders to help provide and support refugees, setting up field hospitals with emergency medical teams. Earlier this month, Prime Minister Bennett flew to meet with President Putin, permitted to break the Sabbath because he was acting for the purpose of saving lives. It is extraordinary that Israel was asked to play this role. It is a symbol of its importance as a world leader, and I hope the United States will continue to strengthen sanctions against Russia, Putin and his cronies, especially his oligarchs. In my role as chair of the Committee on Oversight and Reform, I have been using my position to advocate for strengthening our cyber defenses to protect America and our allies' infrastructure and businesses. We must do all that we can to remain vigilant during this difficult time. Once again, I want to congratulate SAJ for celebrating this important milestone and proving through the decades your commitment to Tikkun Olam, community, and providing a place of spiritual connection. I am honored to be with you tonight, and I would like to present to your rabbi and the congregation a congressional tribute honoring this historic milestone and really achievement in the advancement of women's rights. Where is mine? Here it is. And I would like Gail Brewer, who's written many of these, and Brad Lander to join me in making this presentation. Let's remember this. And I am not going to read it. It just says that you're a groundbreaking historic synagogue that has opened the doors for many ideas, including the advancement and empowerment of women. Thank you. I will get on either side of the rabbi.
Yeah, just the mic.
This is a congressional resolution, and it becomes part of the history of Congress, and it will be kept in the Library of Congress forever. Thank you. Congratulations on your leadership. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. We're so deeply honored by your presence and greatly appreciate your being with us this evening. Next, we're going to invite our SAJ, I want to say a fan already, a second centennial event that Brad Lander is joining us for. Brad Lander, City Comptroller, and also fellow J Fridger, and just all-around friend of many of us in the room and SAJ. Thank you so much, Brad Lander.
Thank you so much, Lauren. What a blessing it is to be here with you tonight. I'm honored, of course, to follow some remarkable women like your rabbi, like Governor Hochul, like Congresswoman Maloney, like Dylan. Dylan, I have to say, you're like, in my mind, the total star of the evening. So thank you. We've been loving the videos. They're just fantastic. And of course, such an honor to be here along with one of the people I've learned so much in government from, Gail Brewer, and of course with another of the people who I've learned so much inside and outside of government from, Ruth Messenger, your extraordinary member. I was here with you for the 100th anniversary of SAJ just a few short weeks ago, but I really wanted to come back for the 100th anniversary of the Bat Mitzvah, because what happened a century ago in this congregation this weekend had a transformative effect on my Jewish life. As I said then, the rabbi who officiated at my bar mitzvah, Susan Talve, one of the first women rabbis, in the country, officiated 8 months pregnant with her first kid, and the picture of my grandfather, who was a conservative Jew, and Susan pregnant and me at my bar mitzvah is an anchoring picture in my life of what's possible in transforming our families and ourselves and our Judaism. The rabbi of most of my adult life who officiated at my wedding, at both the namings and bar and bat mitzvah of both of my children, who nailed the mezuzah on my door. Ellen Lippman is with us on the Zoom. Her grandparents were members of this congregation, and she founded a synagogue, Kolot Chayinu, where Ann Eisenstein, one of Judith's daughters, remains a member to this day. And our current rabbi, Miriam Grossman, is not only a rabbi who graduated from the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, but her father was one of the first graduates of the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College. So what happened here shaped my Jewish life in a way that just reminds us, I asked my daughter, Rosa, who became bat mitzvah a few years ago, how she thought about this event and what happened to her, and she's like, Dad, women have totally renewed and saved Judaism. It really is true in deep and profound ways. So it's not only that it's the right thing, that women can take their rightful place, that, it's a perspective. What feminism is all of us inheriting a world that is so much more rich and diverse and beautiful and nourishing and soul-fulfilling. So I stand here just profoundly grateful, not just for my daughter, but for myself, as to the ways Judaism was transformed at this bima by what happened there. And I don't know how many of you have read Heather McGee's remarkable book, The Sum of Us, but that's really what it teaches us about racism and oppression in general, is, we think of it as something where you're holding on to privilege and you're fought to give it up for justice, but the truth is what you're holding on to is killing you. And if you can come to be a partner in fighting for justice and equality, the world that will be built is better and more beautiful for all of us. Rosa's bat mitzvah portion was Kedoshim, where she got to get up and read, love thy neighbor as thyself. And of course, really, that is just in so many ways the foundational principle. If you want the opportunity for flourishing and creativity and leadership and knowledge, then that person next door to you, of course they want it too. And what it means to love yourself and love them is build a world of full and fundamental equality. So just what I want to offer in closing is, what does that mean today as we're thinking about the kind of bar mitzvah that projects that vision of loving thy neighbor as thyself forward? And Carol rightly pushed us on what it means in thinking about gender and what it means to be more expansive and compassionate in our thinking. And again, that is not just enabling trans kids to come up to this bima as full Jews. It's an opportunity for ourselves to think more expansively about who we are. And I just want to push us a little further, because I think the Judith Kaplan of today is a 13-year-old Asian American girl walking around the streets of this city, afraid, because this is the one-year anniversary of those murders in Atlanta, and been 11,000 anti-Asian hate crimes since then. And it's a 13-year-old undocumented girl in New York City who's come to this country just like our grandparents and great-grandparents did, seeking freedom, and yet she doesn't know if she's going to be able to go to college or get the support to do so. It's the 13-year-old daughter of an African Muslim family who lives in that building of the Bronx fire of just a few months back, because the housing crisis constrains people's abilities so much that to live affordably, they might have to live in a place where their neighbors will die for want of heat. And it is a 13-year-old Palestinian girl wondering when she will have the opportunity for the freedom and self-determination and flourishing that came to life at this bima 100 years ago. And in the same way that my daughter Rosa opens me up to the ways in which that has been my Jewish flourishing, when we can do the same, love thy neighbor as thyself for all those girls, not just will be letting justice roll down, we will be building a world in which every single one of us can flourish, just as intended here at SAJ. Thank you so much for including me.
You know, Brad Lander just gets us here, right? He just gets us. Thank you so much, Brad. We're really excited to welcome New York State Assembly Member Linda Rosenthal to come forward for a few brief remarks. And we haven't seen each other in a little bit, but we spent a lot of time together protesting in support of the men of Lucerne together, and it's wonderful to see you again. Please come forward. Join us.
Great to see everybody. Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal. I represent the Upper West Side. Okay, thank you. I represent the Upper West Side, parts of Hell's Kitchen, and I want to thank SAJ for inviting me to participate in tonight's event. And I'm honored that during Women's History Month, we're all here to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the first bat mitzvah. And thank you to everyone who's been inspired by it and who continues to be inspired by it. You know, I feel like I should have brought a cross pen as a gift for those over a certain age to help mark this historic anniversary. But, you know, since the founding of SAJ, this congregation has been a beacon for our community's spiritual growth and intellectual rigor. We are so lucky to have SAJ as a community anchor, and I couldn't be happier to celebrate this joyous occasion with you. SAJ didn't just hold the first bat mitzvah 100 years ago, it included women in a minyan in 1950. This tradition raised women to positions of leadership, creating rituals that reflected a feminist perspective. And it also laid the groundwork for the inclusion of other marginalized groups. You know, it might surprise some of you to learn that although I was raised as a good Jewish girl who attended yeshiva and whose grandfather was a rabbi, I did not have a bat mitzvah. Our traditions were a bit more conservative at that time, and it's not something that my family even considered. So tonight's celebration makes me a little wistful for what it could have been. But I'm so proud that today it's nothing out of the ordinary for a Jewish girl to prepare and anticipate and carry out her bat mitzvah. You know, I feel like the story of that bat mitzvah is not merely the story of a Jewish woman taking her rightful place as an equal within Judaism. It is also the story of women everywhere struggling for equality, for recognition, and for a voice in the institutions that help to shape society. You know, over the years, we've seen religion used to oppress, but the first bat mitzvah is the embodiment of our faith and what we as a people strive to be, inclusive and thoughtful and loving people. And I read that trans and non-binary people are now also participating in bat mitzvahs here and elsewhere, and I think that is so inspiring and a hope for a much better and inclusive and non-judgmental future. At a moment in our history where so much feels out of control, looking back to the first bat mitzvah with a father and a daughter taking a small action some 100 years ago that changed the course of the future makes me think that together we can do the same thing. As war rages on in Ukraine, we need more of the movement for peace. We've seen children of Ukraine on the front lines of battle, and it just breaks our hearts. But we must do all we can as a community to support these children of war and work together to spark peace. So I want to thank all of you again for having me. I look forward to this congregation continuing to make history for years to come with at the helm, your wonderful rabbi. Thank you so much.
Linda, you are invited to have an adult bat mitzvah at SAJ anytime you want, and come on any Shabbos. We'll give you an aliyah, and we'll give you the blessings. We're very ready to support you. Last dignitary, and then we're going to have a brief musical presentation by our cantor, and then our panel of rabbinic experts, or our discussion of a panel of rabbinic experts, and we're going to invite Gail Brewer, also back for the second time in the 100th anniversary, our fearless city council member. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is an honor to be here tonight, to everyone here and to everybody on the Zoom. I think there are about 150 synagogues around the United States participating in this historic anniversary, and that in itself is very special. And I too want to thank Rabbi Lauren for organizing the program and for your leadership. Yes, we all stood at the Lucerne, but you were one of the few faith leaders who stood there, and you were always causing good trouble, and it's lots of fun to cause good trouble with you. And I want to thank Rabbi Carol Balin for the wonderful discussions and the Jewish Women's Archive, and also Wendy Pastor, who helped put this together, and of course always the Honorable Ruth Messinger. I think we are all celebrating and reflecting on Judith Kaplan's bar mitzvah, while Purim festivities extend into the evening and children and adults dress up as a young heroine. And I know I'm talking about a man, but the rabbi at Roda Shalom last night dressed as a woman, cross-dresser for Purim. And I have to say it was fabulous. So I just want to say Purim is a special moment tonight, too. Especially now, Esther's leadership inspires admiration and acts of bravery in the face of hate and adversity. And tradition calls about celebrants to incorporate acts of kindness into their joy. So, too, Judah's momentous bat mitzvah inspired generations of girls and women of all ages to rise and lead their congregations in prayer. And also, I think we add, as women, acts of kindness and justice. Certainly your rabbi does that, and many, many people here in the congregation. It's led to people growing increasingly comfortable seeing women at the bima, and the role of women of Judaism has expanded tremendously. I'd like to also give a warm greeting to the incredible rabbis joining us here, Rabbi Cohen, Rabbi Sasso, Rabbi Rivera. And I have to say, there's one really special person here, Rabbi Joy Levitt. She's very special to me. And her husband's not bad either, you know, Rabbi Michael Strathfeld. I'm also very fond of him. If we're allowed to talk about men today, I don't know. And I do want to say Governor Hochul being here tonight is very special. When she was lieutenant governor, she carried the same amazing schedule she has now, and I think it's paid off, and we're really honored that she's here. I went to her women's event at the Javits Center the other day and signed legislation supporting women who were experiencing sexual assault. She really gets it, so it was really an honor that she was here tonight. 100 years of the synagogue, 100 years of Bar Mitzvah, to be part of Women's History Month. It's really special to be here at SAJ. And also, as I indicated, Ruth Messinger, not only was she my teacher when I worked for her, but we teach at Hunter College together. These students are very lucky. I sit there, make sure they correct their papers, and she makes them feel inspired. And so that's what she does to all of us. It's really special to have her mentorship. So I have been fortunate throughout my career to have learned from so many monumental women. And these experiences shape my values, the approach to public service, to policy, and really the dedication to developing leadership and service in others. And I think that's exactly what each and every person in this synagogue does. And it's what we're all about for the last 100 years. We've all learned from each other, but we particularly learn, in my case, from the women and from the daily contributions that they make to better serve the community. So thank you for the opportunity to reflect on 100 years. It's a long time, 100 years, of Judith Kaplan's Bar Mitzvah, a powerful and inspiring example of how leadership, starting with a young girl, just like you, Dylan, congratulations, starting with a young girl can create deep change that impacts us all as we sit here after 100 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gail. We're thrilled to have all of them here tonight. Thank you for making this event even more special. So what's going to happen for the rest of the program, as I mentioned, Cancer Lisa Arbisser, whom we are lucky to call our cancer and musical director, she wrote a brand new song in honor of the 100th anniversary of the Bat Mitzvah. It has never been heard before. No one has ever heard it before. It is a debut, and it is specifically in honor of today. And then after, we will invite our esteemed experts to come forward. "100 years. What an incredible milestone to reach, and certainly one worthy of celebration. And what would celebration be without music and song? So at our Shabbat service this coming Saturday, we'll be honoring the contributions of female synagogue composers. But tonight I want to share a song that I wrote in honor of this momentous occasion. Anniversaries allow us to reflect on where we came from and to take stock of where we are in the present moment. So today, I want to raise up the Jewish stories from our sacred text, and hopefully you'll know who some of these folks are, where folks and women confront difficult endeavors or ended up becoming leaders, and to acknowledge the women of today who broke through barriers, both in the Jewish community and American leadership writ large. So, we know that Judith Kaplan Eisenstein has been quoted a number of times in recent articles about something she said in 1992 at the 70th anniversary of the Bat Mitzvah. She recalled that when she chanted her Torah portion for the first time in front of her community, and I quote, "No thunder sounded, no lightning struck." This was in reference to avoiding something horrible, like the world was actually going to fall apart if a female read Torah in front of her congregation. But I think what she did on that day 100 years ago did spark something, and it's why we're all here today. The song I wrote is called Hineni, Here I Am. There's nothing like finding out the night before. You'll be the first one to walk through that door, caught off guard and scared, but reminded you're already fully prepared. Some may snicker, some look
You remember what it was like for not shown to step into those raging waters up to his nose. What about the daughters of Zelophehad who petitioned to get their fair share? The prophet Devorah who teamed up with Barak not only taught Torah but sang her people's victory song. Sometimes you hear a still small voice. Sometimes you must heed the call of a movement. Here I stand where my presence matters. Here I stand, my voice is heard. I will raise up all of those who came before me, who reached out their hand, who took the first step, who said, you belong here, Hineni. Where would we be without Liz Stanton and Lucretia Mott, who found Amendment 19 at Seneca Falls? Rabbi Sally and Rabbi Sandy and Cantor Barbara, and Debbie, she led the women dancing with her guitar. Speaker Nancy and VP Kamala, those who sit up high. Those who sit up high must bring others along, especially those who have a different song. Here I stand where my presence matters. Here I stand, my voice is heard. I will raise up all of those who came before me, who reached out their hand, who took the first step, who heard the small voice, who brought others along, who said, you belong here, Hineni. Hineni. Hineni.
Amazing! And also extremely fitting, because Judith Kaplan is not just the first bat mitzvah. She went on to become one of the most important Jewish music ethnologists and introduced and wrote incredible Jewish synagogue music. And so, Cantor Lisa, thank you so much for bringing your song and in bringing Judith's full spirit as well. Thank you. Now I'd love to invite my dear esteemed colleagues, who you know who you are, to come sit in these 4 seats. The bios of, yes, please, yes, that's you. There's, some of you go here, some of you go there. Just move the mic, just move the mic. Thank you. So we are here tonight with 4 incredible rabbis, groundbreaking, blazing rabbis. And because of as I mentioned, the fullness of the program, we're not going to read their bios, but they are in their full bios, but they are here. And I'm going to ask each one to speak for a few moments. And then as time allows, which might not be so much time, I'll ask a question or 2 of response. And each one is really here to help us understand the significance of bat mitzvah in a unique way, with a unique voice. So our first speaker is Rabbi Sandy Sassow. Please come forward to the bima. Rabbi Sasso is the first female Reconstructionist rabbi in the country. She is also the second female rabbi in the country. But that is just the beginning. As you will see in her bio, she has done so much, including being a congregational rabbi, a teacher, an author, and specifically of children's books. And she wrote, among her many, many amazing books, which I highly recommend you check out, and the link to her book, Judy Leads the Way, is in the chat for those at home. She wrote a book about bat mitzvah, about Judy, and she's here to tell us why and what young girls should know about bat mitzvah.
Well, thank you so much. Rabbi Lauren, you really put on something special. Congratulations. So I am so thrilled. I think I came the furthest, all the way from Indianapolis. I'm so thrilled to be here. Actually, 48 years ago, I walked up to the second floor of this building in 1974 to work for the Jewish Reconstructionist Foundation. It's nice to be back. So I decided to write a children's book about the first bat mitzvah for a couple of reasons. Of course, the story in and of itself is worthy of being told, but I was also very privileged to have a close relationship with Judith and felt personally compelled to tell her story. This, if you haven't seen it, is the result. Judy led the way. So whenever I would teach young people, they would always be surprised to find out that bat mitzvah had not always been part of tradition. They actually had not heard of Judith. I mean, they didn't come to the SAJ, so they didn't hear of Judith. It is really easy for us to forget that the inclusion of Jewish women in Jewish life was not always the case. Judith's story is a reminder not to take all those changes and advancement for granted. Her experience paved the way for women to eventually become rabbis and cantors. And I feel privileged to have been the first woman to graduate from the seminary founded by Rabbi Kaplan and Rabbi Eisenstein. In so many ways, Judith was my mentor. When I started rabbinical school, I thought I would write a dissertation on women in Judaism. I was discouraged. People told me, don't write about women, write about something important. Judith believed it was important. She was an important role model who exemplified what it takes to be yourself at an age when what's most important is to be like everybody else and to fit in. It may have been her father who decided she would become a bat mitzvah, but it was Judith who came up to the front of the congregation when all the women were sitting in the back. That takes courage. Well, Dennis, my husband, who is here tonight, and I knew Judith and her husband, Ira Eisenstein, throughout all our years at the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College. Judith led the music at the Reconstructionist congregation of the North Shore, where Dennis served with Rabbi Eisenstein, and where Joy came afterwards with Lee. So I was particularly impressed by the fact that Judith handed out notated music to all the congregants. And she insisted that even if we couldn't read the notation, we would know whether to go up or down. And we could sing in harmony. And lo and behold, this congregation sang in harmony. It was extraordinary experience for me, who cannot sing very well. Judith was down to earth, she was funny, and she was warm. And she spoke her mind. I recall her once telling me that she disagreed with the talk that I had delivered. That was devastating. She spoke her mind, but she was very careful about a year later and gracious to acknowledge when her views had changed. She said to me, "Do you remember when I questioned something you had said?" How could I forget? "Well," she said, "you were right." That takes a big person. And this reminds me of a conversation that Dennis had with Rabbi Kaplan when we were in seminary. Dennis told Kaplan that he contradicted himself by saying something in class that was different than what he had said the week before, to which Rabbi Kaplan responded, "I too am evolving." Like her father, Judith reveled in the freedom to change. She said of her growing up, there was a constant opening up of possibilities and enrichment. It made being Jewish a great joy. So when our daughter Debbie became a bat mitzvah in 1992, the same year Judith celebrated her 70th anniversary, Dennis and I, and Joy was there too. We invited Judith, the first bat mitzvah, to address our daughter on the bima. And Judith said to our daughter, "Today you are the youngest and I am the oldest bat mitzvah." She made Debbie feel that she was part of history, a part of a long and evolving chain of Judaism. And then she added something else that I will never forget. She said, "Remember to always find joy in your heritage." And the joy of being Jewish was so important to Judith. She expressed that joy through her pioneering work in Jewish music. So there were some lessons that Judith's story teaches young people today, and that I particularly wanted to include in this children's book. First, a seemingly small act can change the world, even when you don't realize it at the time. Bat mitzvah was that seemingly small act. Second, Judith did not seek to be a popular person. She was just comfortable with who she was. So you don't have to dress like or sound like or be like anybody else. She was saying, just be yourself. And finally, Judith teaches us that questions are important. They're at the heart of being Jewish, that we shouldn't be afraid of them, that it's okay to challenge the tradition. I am so grateful to Rabbi Lauren for inviting me to be part of this historic moment. And I feel deeply privileged to have known Judith and to be able to share her story with the next generation.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Sasso. The next person we call up is Rabbi Joy Levitt, no stranger to this bima as the former Rebbitzin emeritus, I guess, emerita of SAJ, and also, of course, as the head CEO of the Marlene Meyerson JCC of Manhattan for 25 years, recently retired. But still up to a lot of good stuff, as we can see in her bio. So Rabbi Levitt is going to come speak about Judith and about adults.
Thank you, Lauren. What an honor to speak with you today with such amazing colleagues, particularly Sandy Sasso, I have to say. If Sandy is a rabbi because of Judith, I'm a rabbi because of Sandy. But it was a big thing you did, not a little thing. Lauren, thank you for inviting me to talk about Judith's second bat mitzvah, which, if I am completely honest, wasn't something she much welcomed. In that way, her first and her second bat mitzvah were somewhat linked. Others wanted and needed her to do it, not for her sake, but for the sake of larger principles, principles to which she certainly adhered, but had no need to articulate through this particular ritual. Every time Judy and I discussed this momentous service, and I was also privileged to study with her, to learn with her, to officiate at her funeral. But every time we discussed this, a momentous event that would change Jewish history, she was a bit uncomfortable. She hadn't initiated the desire, feminist as she was even then. She actually didn't even do much, as you've heard, as she would always quickly point out. So when I came to her in 1991 to suggest that she have this second bat mitzvah, she balked. Truth be told, I felt that it would be an opportunity for the Reconstructionist movement to assert its rightful place as the leader of egalitarianism in Jewish life. Judith would once again be an instrument toward that end. Why then? Well, the biblical lifespan is 70, so there is a tradition of a second bar mitzvah at 83, 13 years later. And for women, because the age of bat mitzvah in the Talmud is 12, that would be 82, the age that Judith was approaching. But when she once again demurred, saying it hadn't been that big of a deal and she didn't do that much, I said, well, now's your chance. I said, I will only officiate at this service if you read Torah. Then you can get that monkey off your back. Truth was, I don't think it was a monkey on her back. It never occurred to me that she actually couldn't read Torah. She was a musicologist, played piano. One of my fondest memories is listening to Judith and Ira play four-handed piano in their apartment in Rittenhouse Square when I was in rabbinical school. Of course, my setting terms for something that she didn't really want to do anything anyway was a bit brash, to say the least, but somehow it worked. I think she so loved the Reconstructionist movement that she was willing to help however she could. She agreed to learn Torah, which of course was not that difficult for her, and we began planning. What do I remember? Well, it turns out, at 68, you don't remember that much. For instance, Sandy gave the speech at the event following the bat mitzvah. She reminded me of that, but I reminded you that I officiated your daughter's bat mitzvah, which you apparently forgot, so I think we're even. I remember we commissioned a talit for her, which we replicated for 50 people who bought them so that we could help defray the cost. You can see the talit in that picture of the event. Then, as now, the Reconstructionist movement was operating on a shoestring. I remember the struggle to find a venue that would be accessible to the Reconstructionist synagogues in Long Island, Manhattan, and Westchester, ultimately choosing Queens, Terrace on the Park. And I remember the notable Jewish feminists who came to celebrate with us: Ruth Messenger, Letty Cotton Pogrebin, Gloria Steinem, Rachel Cowan, Betty Friedan. I remember getting a truly weird call from Japanese television asking if they could film the event. To this day, I don't know why or where that film is, but somebody should find it. Mostly, I remember Judy's radiant face. You can see it right there, as she read Torah for the first time at age 82, and the joyful processional through the room filled with hundreds of people. My daughter, Sarah, who was 9 years old at the time, was in that processional and honestly had no idea why all of us were crying. For Sarah and her friends, bat mitzvah was no big deal. It was their birthright. And it was hard to explain to them that 'twas not always so. That it took one courageous father and one willing daughter to divide the waters, make the splash that would cause the ripples in the Jewish community forever, so that they, these children of ours, could take it for granted. At the service, the choir of the Reconstructionist Synagogue of the North Shore, under the direction of Judith's student, Adele Blumenthal, Aleha HaShalom, performed Judith's beautiful cantata, What is Torah, which I think was first performed here in the sanctuary. While now its language is terribly dated, but for those of you who wish to actually see it, it's right here in the booklet that we produced for the event, which I have up here. Its sentiments are not dated. What is Torah? Torah is a scroll proudly held aloft for all the congregation to see, carried around the crowded synagogue for little children to kiss, for grandmothers to weep. It is a flag leading an army of peace. Dance with it, sing with it, clasp it in your arms, whirl in ecstasy of joy, singing, shouting, dancing, dancing. As Ari Goldman wrote in the Times right before the event, there will be no disc jockeys, chopped liver molded into the shape of swans, or Madonna-like lookalikes, just a group of good friends, the blessings of a rabbi, and the sounds of ancient cantillation from the lips of an 82-year-old woman who started a modern tradition. And as Judith herself said about the event, let's not fool ourselves. This isn't my party. It's a celebration of women's move into the heart of Jewish life. Judith not only paved the way for young girls to become bat mitzvah, but her second time around motivated thousands of adult women to join her in the study and celebration that bat mitzvah signifies. In all three of the congregations that I have served, the most powerful experiences I had were celebrating adult women who had either been deprived of becoming bat mitzvah at 12 or 13, or for some reason hadn't had access to at the time. Some of you are actually here in this room. Perhaps their parents didn't believe in it, or they grew up in homes that weren't Jewish, or they hated Hebrew school and didn't want the ritual. Whatever their reasons, women as young as 25 and as old as 90 studied many hours with me, learning how to read Torah and teach Torah in order to take their rightful place among the Jewish people. It is inspiring to watch the power of this ritual, and Linda, if you do it, I will be here. This simple act of standing at the Torah, taking your talit, and touching the scroll in order to say, this is my story, I belong here. I will end with just one story. In May of 2002, shortly after Michael became the rabbi of SAJ, I was speaking at a Kiddush with Marjorie Weiler, a longtime member of the SAJ and Ruth's mother. At the time, she was 86 years old and, of course, had never been bat mitzvah. So I couldn't, where are you, Ruth? You're here? Okay. So, of course, I couldn't resist. Come on, Marjorie, piece of cake. You can do this. She said to me at the time, if you have a class, I will join. And that's how the first adult bat mitzvah class I taught here at the SAJ was started. Sadly, Marjorie died that summer, right before the class began. And since that time, Ruth and Andrew have sponsored the Kiddush for every adult bat mitzvah class at the SAJ, and I am sure they will do so for you as well, Linda. Maybe these adults, now men and women, wouldn't say it was a piece of cake. They worked hard, but it certainly was as sweet. Thank you.
Joy, you'll be, first of all, that was gorgeous. Thank you so much. You'll be proud to know, April 30th, 17 adult SAJers will become adult Bar Mitzvah. And maybe Ruth now has an opportunity to sponsor the Kiddush. I didn't know that. Thank you. The next of our esteemed experts and is a beloved friend, Rabbi Mira Rivera, who is also an incredible trailblazer, the first Filipina-American woman to be ordained at the Jewish Theological Seminary, and an incredible leader among many emerging communities for Jews of color, a leader, a rabbinic mentor for Amud. Is that the right title? I think I have in here. As well as just, you could keep going and going and going and going. I am in all of you, and I'm so grateful that you're my colleague. Come on up, Rabbi Rivera.
Hineni. You belong here. So a night of stories. And there's the stories of those who fall through the cracks. It was the spring of 2019, and some of you, we were together. We were together in Maryland. It was a gathering of Ben the Ark, Sela, leadership, training jewels for 15 years and counting during that time. And I was there because I was the 15th cohort of leaders that were deemed, yes, worthy to receive the training and be in this pantheon and be in that community of other leaders. And that spring was first JOC Shabbaton. JOC stands for Jews of Color. So we were celebrating a milestone. Friday night, Saturday morning, my esteemed colleague, Sabrina Sojourner, who's a cantoral soloist, we prepared the service, came to the Torah readings. In the renewal style, because I worked at Romemu at that time, I thought, let's do the first aliyah as a group aliyah for everybody, right? Second aliyah. Could anyone, and I invited from the community? No one. I approached one woman. Would you like to come and have the blessing of the Torah? She said, I never became bat mitzvah. And this is a woman whose name, if I tell you here, you would recognize if you're plugged into that world of Jews of color. I've never been bat mitzvah. But yes, she is a leader. She did the blessing, and we said, that is, you have become bat Torah. Opening and closing blessing. We did the Hora, we did Siman Tov. Third aliyah. I'd like to invite to come up to the Torah. I've never become bat mitzvah. The same story, we said, we'll say the blessing with you, and you will become bat mitzvah at this moment. We did a Hora, we did Siman Tov, fourth bat mitzvah, fourth aliyah, same story. Fifth aliyah, same story. Sixth aliyah, same story. What happened? What happened here? That these 6 women, as adults, were recognized as Jewish leaders in Jewish communities all over the country. No one had ever invited them for a blessing for the Torah. No one. That was many, many years after I myself found myself crying in my bedroom as my daughter was learning for her bat mitzvah. I was sitting in her bedroom crying out of pure jealousy. Jealousy that this voice was coming out from that other room as she chanted. I had been in a Jewish community for many years. No one had asked me. Except I had to jump to the top of the honors. I was asked to be Kala for Simchat Torah. But I was told, you don't need to know everything, just memorize it. Hineni, for those of us, the black women, those who are seen as different, the Asian women, the Latina woman, the Latina girl, the black girl, the Asian girl, and those of us who fall in between, Hineni, you belong here. Hineni. Thank you.
In a night of celebration, it is so important for us to remember where we still have to go. Thank you, Rabbi Mira, for lifting up that difficult but so vital truth that we still have a ways to go to be a fully inclusive Jewish community. Thank you. Our final expert, I like calling them you guys that, and colleague is Rabbi Tamara Cohen, who is so very many things to me. She is, the first thing I think of Tamara is a liturgist and a poet and someone who creates beauty in our tradition. She is also an educator, an activist, and in her role at Moving Traditions, she spends a lot of time thinking about B'nai mitzvah, bat mitzvah, bar mitzvah, bi mitzvah. And she's gonna talk with us about something we've already brought to the fore and is something that we take great pride in at SAJ, is the continuation of this gender revolution to expand to people who are transgender, non-binary, genderqueer, et cetera. And also Tamara and her colleague, Rabbi Daniel Brenner, wrote an accompanying lesson plan and questions that went along with the Instagram series and are being used in classrooms like SAJ and around the country. So thank you, Tamara.
Thank you, Lauren, and everybody who's still here and everybody who spoke. I'm very moved to be here as part of this panel. And I just wanted to say really briefly that I chose to wear this Ukrainian man's wedding shirt, which I bought on the streets of Kiev years ago when I was there with Project Kesher, who's one of the co-sponsors tonight. And I've had the opportunity of doing group and individual adult bat mitzvot for women in the former Soviet Union. And I'm just holding their safety with me close to heart as we sit here tonight and speak of all the places that women and girls and all people need access to Torah and also access to life. So I am here tonight. I was asked to speak as a representative of Moving Traditions. For those of you who don't know, we've worked with over 28,000 teens and their families over the past 15 years, giving them the support to define who they are as Jews, as adolescents, and as people with various gender identities. When we started 15 years ago, that meant working with girls, thinking about what does it mean, what's that process of becoming a woman, and becoming a Jewish woman. We moved from there to be thinking about boys and images of masculinity and how to help support boys in all their variety coming into healthy Jewish masculinity. And more recently, we've been working also with transgender and non-binary teens. We continue to grow specifically our Bi Mitzvah program in partnership with over 100 synagogues. This is one of them. And one of the things that we've realized is that even though traditionally we always say, today you are a woman, today you are a man, actually we know that in our privileged lives, today you are a teenager, perhaps. And this is a messy process of adolescence. And really, it's a life cycle event, not just for the individual, but for their family. And so what we've realized is that when we give rabbis and educators and cantors the tools to talk about that and to engage with families about everything that's going on in that messy process of adolescence, this ritual starts to have a different level of meaning. And so what I want to talk about is why we chose to call our program B Mitzvah, or B Mitzvah, as I like to say it, and why I would love if one of the ways that you leave tonight, leave the Zoom, is thinking that actually part of honoring 100 years of bat mitzvah is to start thinking more about B Mitzvah, being in mitzvah, as a way of opening up the Jewish community more, opening up Jewish ritual more. Because as we all know, there's a big cultural battle taking place right now all around us. And that battle is largely being waged against transgender and non-binary teens and their parents. There are more anti-trans bills being introduced in the last year in this country than ever before. Maybe it's because we're slowly winning, and as Ruth has taught me, when we start to win, everybody comes out and starts to fight against us. Maybe, but in that climate, we really have to go back to the place, to the Jewish knowledge about how much words matter. And our words, our sacred Hebrew words, are very gendered words. And so when we say bat mitzvah and bar mitzvah, we are defining in some way that I had no idea about when I was a 12 and 13-year-old. We're defining who's in and who's out. We're defining who counts in this Jewish world. We're defining whose struggles to become themselves are welcome here and are welcome as part of our community and as part of Torah. What if instead we said, you don't have to decide at 12 or 13. You don't have to know. Sure, you're going to be called up to the Torah, but if we call you up with na'amod instead of ya'amod or ta'amod, we're saying something. We're saying you're part of our community no matter what. And we can do that, and doing that is a good thing for every single one of us, regardless of what our gender identity is going to be. We're saying gender may be a key aspect of your identity, and it certainly has been for me, or it may be a much less important aspect of your identity, but you don't have to feel Jewish pressure around it. There are enough other pressures out there around it. So stand on the bima and use whatever name you choose to get called for your aliyah, and we're not going to hold you to keeping that name as the name you choose next year. And we can call you up without a reference to your gender, and we can send out invitations without a reference to your gender. And you can know that no matter what, the bima is open to you, Jewish community and life are open to you. And I really think that that is the natural extension of what we're here to celebrate today. Kaplan taught us that Judaism is an evolving religious civilization. It is an evolving religious patriarchal civilization, like most of our civilizations, and it's changing, but it's still in the early stages of changing. And we can help it continue to change, because we know a lot more today about gender and sex and the difference between them, about how bodies come in more than two binaries. And sure, all of these things are contested too, but we get to, especially those of us who are Jewish leaders, help make meaning and make space in our communities. And so, as we conclude this evening, thank you for making space for this. And I hope that on the next celebration, we have with us lots of trans and genderqueer and non-binary Jews who can share with us their first experiences and how people can't believe that once this was something that didn't exist.
Thank you, Tamara, and really restraining myself from saying so many things. This is such a passionate issue for me, but I just want to tell one quick story, which is that I've had, we call everyone B Mitzvah for the last several years, Nala Amod, and I had a teen email me 2 days before their B Mitzvah. I changed my pronouns, FYI, my parents don't know, or I wasn't clear, and we're like, we gotcha, no problem, nothing has to change, all is good, just keep smiling, we'll see you on Shabbat. It's amazing and transformative and so important. So keep doing it and gratefully take that message with us. So we have clearly come to the end of the program. I just want to say two things briefly. The first is that I would encourage you, in honor of Judith, to make a donation to a charity of your choice that advances women or non-binary people. And or in addition, I would suggest Project Kesher's Emergency Fund for Women in the Ukraine. The link should be in the chat for those who are at home, and if not, it's easily found on SAJ's stuff and around in the world, in the Jewish community. I want to also just conclude by starting with saying what I said at the beginning. When a Mordechai comes up to you and says, maybe it is for this moment that you have come into this position, say yes. One small step can change the world. Thank you so, so much. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for celebrating 100 years of Bat Mitzvah. Thank you at home. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening, everyone. Good night, Laila Tov. Oh yeah, can the speakers do a little bit of photos up the front?